events that happened to us and our people that had a disastrous effect on our people, and has now just recently come to the forefront with the discovery of these unidentified bodies at these different locations across the country. And I'll tell you that there'll be many more, and there'll be many more. And so we come tonight to share our stories. And I brought with me three of my gentlemen here, three of my close friends and relatives, to share their experiences with you. But before we start, I would like to call on Reverend Archibald here to offer a prayer on behalf of St. Andrews, and I'll call on my brother Wallace to say a prayer on our behalf as well. And he's going to pray, and then he's going to sing a song for us, a prayer song. So I'll open the floor to Mr. Archibald here.
Thank you, Rudy. And thank you to our guests who've come tonight. It's our honor and privilege to have you with us for this evening. And we want to say a welcome to St. Andrew's Church, and thank you for being willing to share in the way that you're going to share tonight, even some painful things. And we aim to receive those stories with the respect and with the care and the love that they deserve. So as we begin, let us open ourselves to the presence of God. Let us pray. O loving God, we thank you that you hold us in mercy and in your healing. In Jesus Christ, you call us to love you and to love our neighbor. You invite us to show love and to show honor and to show respect to our neighbors. And we know that this is the path to greater peace and living in your great peace. But we admit that we don't always love our neighbors, and sometimes the implications of that are very painful. And so this evening, as we come to hear truth, we pray that you may open our ears, open our minds, and most of all, open our hearts, that we may receive the gift of this truth from our brothers who have come to share with us tonight. We know that when we come together in openness and in hospitality, that we always grow together in greater life. We ask you to be here and to lead us, Holy Spirit. Amen.
All my relations. My name is Wallace, my Christian name. Man of the Earth. That's the name that I know by in my community, as well as to our Creator. Natives all have Indian names, whichever tribe they belong to. We all have Indian names. That's our identification to our Creator. That's who we are. Anyway, I'm very grateful and happy to be here. Normally we don't use a microphone when we do prayers, and that's just the way we do things. Ani danaway magnetuk. Agina nishka kanagdituyan kanaki unemishumis. Miguichka pijayan manungo. We thank you, Creator God, for coming to sit amongst us today. Look after us, your people. And it doesn't matter where we come from or who we are. We all pray to the same Creator, God. Jimmy Wait, go come in to man, missions. Inanishka Ganagritu and Kanakigo. Anum Gumni Nunde and Amiakoi. Pangi. Chigua. I want to sing a song, a prayer song, when I'm done with my prayer here. I ask you, Creator, to look after all our people, everyone in this universe, yourself and your helpers also, Creator. You're the only one. We ask for your help in bringing us all together and looking after all people, not only certain areas. Thank you for coming to sit with us today. We thank you to give us good thoughts. We ask you to look after each other as we do things in a good way, wanting to ask you to help us guide our tongues so that we can speak with good authoritative openings, explaining why we're here. We ask you to help us today. I want to sing a prayer song, and as I sing this prayer song, I want each and every one of us to delve within our own person and be thankful for all the good things that have happened in your life and all the good things that are about to happen in the future. We're looking forward to that. Each and every one of us is different, and that's a good thing. That's the way we're designed. So, with that, I thank you for listening to me, and I'm going to now sing the prayer song. Song, we ask Manituk to come and join us, which is all the spirit people that look after all of us. Jimmy Witch, thank you for listening.
Doesn't matter. My name is Ernie Poundmaker, and I've been associated with St. Andrews on a few occasions now. And it all began in 2019 for us when we began working with Brian in organizing a cultural sharing day. And it was a beautiful event. We had many people come through here and see the First Nations, the true First Nations, and the things that we do, and the way we live, and the way that we believe, and the way that we celebrate and show our culture. And we changed attitudes that day. Sadly, many of our non-Indigenous counterparts tend to paint our people under the same brush. And oftentimes it's a very negative view. But that day, we made strides in showing the true First Nations. And we showed that through our songs and our dances and our ceremony. But also showed our culture and all these things that were given to us as First Nations people to celebrate our life, to celebrate our culture. And we did it through our creativity, the artwork that you've seen, the craft work that you've seen, the traditional medicines presentations that were made by our resource people in our community. But also we exhibited our dances, and we explained the history of the dances, the meaning behind the dances, the meaning behind the songs, what this regalia represents to us as First Nations people. And through that, we were able to show that our dancing is more than beads and feathers. It comes from a deeply spiritual place. It comes from a connection that goes back thousands and thousands of years. And when we do these things, we honor our grandfathers and our grandmothers that were here before us. And we never wrote these things down, these teachings. It was all oral. It was an oral tradition. And we've maintained that. Our spirituality is shown by that drum right there, that signifies Mother Earth. That signifies the time that our mothers carried us for 9 months. And that's all we heard for 9 months was that heartbeat, that drum beat, they say. And we honor that. When we came into this world, we are gifted with drums to be able to remember that time when we were in the spirit world and we came to this place. And so those songs are sacred to us. And there are people in our community that are singers. They carry that message. We're all given gifts of some way, in some form, to help the common camp, to help the group as a whole. And some of us were singers. My friend Robert George here is one of those singers. And he sings at ceremonies. But that keeps it alive, that heartbeat, to remind us where we came from. And so today we want to share our stories with you. We have a troubled and difficult history where we came from. Something that was brought to us from a foreign country, from a foreign people. And we were told long before the coming of the European We knew they were coming. But we were also told that the greatest challenge that we would face when they arrived here was that they would bring a whole new way of thinking to us as the original peoples of this land. And a lot of those things, a lot of those belief systems they brought totally opposed the way that we were taught about this land, about how to treat each other. Those things would be challenging to us. And many of our people would fall by the wayside as a result of those different attitudes and different ways of thinking. And one of those was that they had no respect for what we had. They thought that we had no value about land. They didn't understand that the land was everything to us. It was what sustained life and gave life to all of us. Whether it was the four-legged or whether it was the plants. We lived in reverence of these things. We lived alongside these things. And we took care of these things because we knew that that land, that plant life, that animal life is what sustained life and gave life. So we had a very sacred connection with this land. Other people came in and began to exploit this land, what was on the land and what was under the land. They exploited that. Our people were taken and sent to these schools where the underlying motive was to turn us all into what they were. They wanted to turn us into white people. They wanted to assimilate us into their society, a society that they believed was far superior than ours. And we were put in these places. And the sad part of it is, some of our people never came home. Just think for a second. Send your children off to school. Give responsibility over to a people who claimed love, who cared for life. And it turned out to be a horrible experience for many of us, many of our people. I suffer from that today, even though I didn't attend these schools. My mother pulled my older brother and older sister out of school the year that I was supposed to enter into those schools. She took us out and removed us and took us to the bush. And we survived. We thrived because we were in our element. We knew how to live off the land. And we were happy. But the most important thing was we hung on to what our grandparents, our grandmothers, our great-grandparents, all these people had set aside for us, put these things in place for us. So we knew, because we had a relationship with this creation. That was all taken at one time. Many of our people went into these schools, never to return, placed into an environment where there was no love, where there were no special days to celebrate your birthday, that sacred day when grandfathers brought you to this place. And that's cause for celebration for us. Our birthday to us is a time to celebrate. because you brought hope for the future when you arrived on this earth. It was a special occasion. All that was thrown aside. A lot of our people never got to celebrate birthdays. To us in our community is a very special day. It was a blessed day when that new life arrived, because it was a gift from the spirit world that brought us here. And all that was taken in many ways. And so many of our people had to go underground because our ways were outlawed. They were considered pagan. And they instituted laws that outlawed our ceremonies, our sun dances, our sweat lodges, all these things. All these things that gave us life. All these things that gave us life. Yeah, if we could get some water, guys. Let's get something to drink for these guys. And so, today, we're going to reclaim some of that. And this is something that we've been doing all our lives, all these gentlemen that sit with me. This is how we reconcile what happened to us. And the challenge is out there now for mainstream society in this country to reconcile what happened to the original peoples of this country. But first, before you can reconcile and make change, you have to hear the truth. Touch base with that truth. Then and only then, with that understanding, then you can start to reconcile and make things good. So we're here tonight to share those things with you. Tonight I brought together my brothers here to talk about those things. And maybe some of the things you hear are going to hurt you. But sometimes we have to go to those painful places in order to heal. Look at them for what they are. Try to understand in your heart what those things are. So I'm going to call on my brother Wally here to open things for us and to speak about his experiences. You want to sing? All right, so I'm going to call on my brother Robert here to sing another prayer song for us here before we start. And then we'll call on Wallace to share his stories with us.
Thank you, Ernie. Before I start, myself, I'm a 60 scoop survivor. I'm a residential school survivor, second generation. I'm 65 years old. My mom spent a few years in residential school in Saskatchewan and Manitoba. And the song that I'm going to sing is a buffalo song. And in our way, in our beliefs, that buffalo is that old mushum, that grandfather that lives in the north, and represents the gray-haired ones, the ones with gray hair. And that's my spirit. I always say, agamemok, don't give up. And that's how I personify my life, is not to give up on who I was. So the song is basically for all our people that I've learned from an elder back in our territory. And he said, you sing it,
You know it, you sing it. Because it's for everybody, it's for our people to keep going forward. And this is part of, part of my healing journey, because I used to utilize that spirit to keep me going. But we'll share that later on after the boys are done talking, and I'll share a bit about myself. So.
On Brother Wally here to share some of his experiences of his time in residential school, but also how he found a way for himself to come to grips with what happened and also find a good way of life for himself. So I'll leave that to Wallace here. He comes to us from Sagamay First Nations in southern Saskatchewan. He's been a resident of Alberta for quite a number of years now. So welcome, Wallace Alexson.
Ni dana wi magani tuk. In my language, Sutu Ojibwe, that means all my relatives. And we are all related. Everything that lives, we're related to. From the smallest ant to the biggest animal and human, we're all related. I just want to mention that to start with. My story begins, I would say, around 1951-52. Is when I first experienced the start of residential school. I used to live with my grandmother. She raised me up until school year. That was quite the experience when we first, the priest and farmer instructor, as they called him back then, And I think an RCMP officer picked us up. I don't know if anyone knows about the old bombardiers they used to use back then. Anyway, that's the kind of a vehicle that come and picked us up in, it must have been November sometime. As I know, it was cold, snowy, wintry weather. And yeah, they picked us up screaming and yelling and to no avail. 3 big men grabbed a hold of me, picked me up, walked me into that bombardier, and shut the door. That was the last I seen my people for quite some time. So that's how it began, by them, coming to scoop us up. And I wasn't the only one. There were many, many, many people of my age that were scooped up in that manner. And when they took us down to the residential school, the name of my residential school was Maribel. It was on the Cowazess Reserve, just north of Broadview, Saskatchewan, in the valley, the Qu'Appelle Valley. Beautiful valley. But the memories are not of the valley. The memories are of the treatment. And why? Why were we treated that way? It's like we were being loaded up as cattle, animals, and taken into the school. And we didn't know that was a school. We didn't know what the heck that was. So when we got there, we were stripped of our clothing, washed down with some kind of chemicals. To this day, I don't know what the heck they are. And yeah, that was humiliating to start with. I mean, stripping a person right down to nothing. And we never had that kind of treatment ever in our life. We always had respect from our people, looking after us as children. And the other bad thing was we went there with long hair, and lo and behold, the first thing they done was they shaved us. Snipped the braid first, and then with a hand clipper, I think it was, shaved us bald. And I'm telling you that that hand clipper hurt like a son of a gun, because it wasn't very sharp, I don't think, but it sure pulled on your skull hair, and that hurt. Now, we never ever seen that kind of treatment in our life before that time. So that was a first-hand experience in itself, just to be treated in such a manner. As time went on, got into the school routine, as they called it. We had a boys' playroom. We also had a big mess hall where they fed all the kids. Food, as they called it. Now, I don't know how they couldn't classify that, whatever slop that they fed us, as food. More like a mixture of a whole bunch of things and chunk of bread. Terrible thing. We weren't used to eating that in that fashion, you know. Secondhand food. At home, we always had things like deer meat, rabbit, grouse, that type of protein, and vegetables. But here, at the school, you know, it's so clear. I can see it right now in front of me. Very tough, very hard. It brings emotion out. Hardly ever talked about this in the past, but in order for us to heal, we need to do this. We need to bring it forth and bring it to the forefront so that everyone in this country, in Turtle Island, North America, and around the world needs to know about what happened in these residential schools. And a lot of terrible things went on that we saw as young children. We never ever imagined we'd see things like, you know, all the beatings, lots of beatings. Yeah, that was a very difficult time. Changed from, you know, being so laid back at home, especially with living with my grandmother and grandfather. Well, we never ever got treated in such a manner. And of course, we were subject to all different size students, I'll call them. People that were brought into the residential schools at different age groups, right from probably age 4 or 5, maybe to, I don't know, maybe 13, 14 years old, somewhere in there. And then we had to deal with those guys, the bigger boys. And when you don't have any other siblings or relatives there to help you out in situations, you get picked on a lot, especially if you've got dark skin. We got into many fights with boys about my own age, and went on for a long time. And towards the end, I was getting so good at being able to look after myself, being able to fight back with people my age. So I was getting the better of everybody else. And then the big brothers, cousins or whatever, step in to these younger guys that are my age. And they hold me down and let the younger guys hit me with sticks, ball gloves, skates, whatever they could get their hands on. Beaten. What do you do? Never was treated like that in my life before that time. Anyway, that went on for all the time that I was there until my mother came in. She made 2 attempts to come and get me. Oh, the one thing I forgot to mention was when I was picked up by these men who took me to the school. I was living with my grandmother at the time, and she was threatened with jail time if she didn't let me go for them to pick me up. I forgot to mention that, so it's just kind of a slide back here. I think that was quite important because it put fear in our parents, grandparents, and what choice did they have? They didn't want to go to jail, type of thing. So it was very hard at that point in time. This was going back to 1951, 52. Now, just to skip ahead again, back to where I left off and slid back a little bit. We were subjected to cruelty by the older boys at that school. They'd make us take showers all together. Little guys, big guys, everybody at the same time. And again, touching, sexuality, at this point in time, I'm not sure if there was any penetration or not, but we certainly got subjected to a lot of sexual abuse, beaten, bigger boys with wet towels, snapping at you, hitting you all over, and they're laughing about it, enjoying themselves. And we had what you call a boys keeper, an older person that's supposed to be watching over this kind of activity so that it doesn't happen. But he let it go on for whatever reason. And that was an experience in itself. Never ever happened to me. Never knew what that was. And on top of it all, when you're by yourself and you got nobody to back you up with anything, no friends, no relatives, you get blamed. Oh, he started that. From all the rest of the relatives of that young man that I was fighting with, so to speak. And lo and behold, the old priest, he comes along with a big long strap about like that. Roll up your sleeves. No, I'm not going to roll up my sleeves if you're going to hit me. Roll up your sleeves, he says. Whacks me across the back with that strap. Roll up your sleeves. Whack. Another cracker right across the back. And by the time you get beaten like that a few times, you are going to roll up those sleeves. So we pulled them up, both sides. Put out your hands. Both hands like that. And I thought, well, this guy's going to hit me on a hand. That shouldn't be too bad. But I don't know what he had on that strap, but it was either carbolic salve or some kind of chemical that sunk into your skin when you were hit, and it hurt like a son of a gun. Strapped from the elbows down. 10 times on each side. Bang, bang. Cry like a son of a gun. Didn't help. No help whatsoever. Even though you were showing emotion that you were hurt. Instead, I think maybe he might took enjoyment out of that, seeing little kids being hurt like that and crying and carrying on. This type of treatment went on, well, just about for the duration that I was there. I got lots and lots and lots of strappings because I couldn't stand up for myself. And when I did, beating from the boys and then beating from the priests, This is one of the reasons why we don't speak in public about these kind of things that happened. We're ashamed. They took away our pride, took away our self-esteem. And the other thing that I have to mention is we had school taught by the sisters, they called them. And here was another different type of beatings that we got. They had, they call a rosary, I think. It's been such a long time ago since I was, but I'm remembering, I think that's what the name of it was, rosary. And each one of those little black beads had a prayer to it, if I recall right. And you had to remember each one of those. And if you couldn't remember one of the ones, you know, they're all in order. You couldn't remember which one it was or which prayer goes with what. Had a stick about this long. I think it was called a ruler. Smacked across the head with that. Bang. Remember it for next time. And I don't know. I didn't have a good memory, I guess, because I couldn't remember all those beads. I was scuffed around a lot with that stick. Why did they treat us like animals? We didn't know. And we couldn't talk our language. Wouldn't allow us to. Devil's language, they say. Heathen language. I didn't even know what the heck the word heathen meant, you know. But we were disciplined with those kind of words and that kind of actions. And that was something you never felt ever in your life. So, as a matter of fact, when my mother would come and visit, and my grandmother, they'd get there, that was team and horse and buggy days. They'd get there, they'd have to hire somebody to come down and visit. And when they came, not too many times. Lucky if they showed up maybe once or twice. But the last time I was determined I was not staying there anymore. Gotta go. Gotta get out of here. If you don't take me, I'm running. A lot of the students did run at that time, and a lot of them didn't survive in the midst of winter storms, cold. In those days, way back then, it was 40, 50 below with a wind chill. Oof, cold. I remember that. So I wouldn't let my people leave me anymore. Howled and cried and done whatever I had to do, ran away right there, right then and there. Caught me up. Loaded me on the sled, and that was the last I seen of that school at that time. And just to move forward a little bit from there. In my school years, going to day school, for whatever reason, I must have had some kind of different training from my people, because I learned from all that experience I had at residential school to be strong, more powerful than I should have been. I was always in some kind of a scuffle with others of my age and older. And that went on until we got into the teen years, and then of course, by that time, we were introduced to drinking alcohol by others. uncles, friends, parents even. And that turned us into false courage, as they call that. So I got into many, many difficult things at that age. I thought I was pretty strong, pretty tough after I had a few drinks. Crazy. Crazy thinking. I didn't have anybody to direct me in the right direction at that point in time. Either that happened or else I didn't listen, one of the two. But anyway, I was always in some kind of trouble. Drinking too much, doing things you're not supposed to do. Then one day, sat down with an elder, relative of mine. He says, "You know, grandson, I want to tell you something." Lit up a smudge, similar to what we use on a daily basis, with some incense in there. I don't know what kind it was, probably sweet grass at that point in time, but he made that smudge, set it down in front of him. And as the smoke was coming up, he was looking. Going like this. And it just so happened, I think a few days before that I had a .22. I was a hunter by that time. I started hunting early. And I don't know, for whatever reason, one of my friends or whoever I got in trouble with broke it, bent the barrel, threw it away in a bush. And the reason I'm telling you that is this old guy, medicine man, he's seen that. Through all that smudge smoke. And he told me exactly where that gun was. He said, in the springtime, when the snow is gone, look over here. That's where you'll find that gun. The reason I'm telling you this is because these old people from the past, they had such good vision and were able to predict things, see things through spirituality. And that's, I'm just getting to the point where that's where I got my guidance as a teenager. Before that time, I was out of control, trying to prove myself. And when I got thinking about things, and I got the spirituality, so to speak, then I pursued education, again, guided by elders, parents, grandparents, get that education. Use the tools of the white man, they said, so that you can, putting it nicely, join forces with them so that you can become part of the world. But that wasn't the case either. I had one hell of a time to fit in. I was always the only Indian amongst all the white kids when I went to high school. So we were boarded out. Government took us off the reserve and boarded us out in homes. And I ended up in a place called Davidson, Saskatchewan. And I spent my junior high years there, only native. At first, it was okay, but then afterwards it started, getting bad. People making fun of you. But I was one of those ones that was fortunate to be a gifted athlete. I was good at whatever I tried, whether it be baseball, hockey, or broom ball, as they called it, just all kinds of sports like that. I was good at it. Not quite the best. There was always somebody better, but I was right up there. And that's how it went for years, and then got into the high school years. They moved me into the city. And from that point on, well, went through the high school years, same thing. Prejudice, always being left out of things, being made fun of, you know, and that type of thing, being called down and getting into fights again, and you know, you get piled on. Always, there wasn't many Indians going to these high schools at that point in time. Maybe 4 or 5, but not everybody was together. And I don't know why. And we're still that way, unfortunately. But we're trying to get together nowadays. And that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about was the treatment that we received as youngsters coming up. We had to fight our way through everything. And made me realize when I got into my adult life that you got to try again. And no matter how many times you get knocked down, get up and do it again. So that's one of the hard lessons that I learned from that, because we were beaten so often that didn't mean nothing. Hurt like a son of a gun, but still alive. So what do you learn from that? You learn to persevere. You learn to be strong. You need to learn to go forward with conviction. Got married, had kids, raised them, always had a job. Started off as a farm boy, worked my way through that era, went into the city, got an education, and got a pretty good job. Moved to Alberta and got a job with the oil field. Worked 32 years with an oil company. And it took a lot of perseverance. It wasn't a matter of somebody handing you something. You earned every bit of it, every step of the way. And before I got on to the oil company, I worked as a carpenter for 10 years. And that was another big one. All learning experiences. And when I say a hard time, it was a hard time throughout all my life. But I learned from each one of the experiences that I went through. And I just got to mention, too, that my wife done things exactly the same way. Tough. Life was a son of a gun, and it still is, and we're trying to rectify that by having people understand a little bit of what our life was like. And with that, I think I'm going to end there and let the next person carry on. Jimmy Witch, thank you for listening to me. Oh.
Wally. I'm going to call on Perry Adjucote to share some of his experiences. Perry comes to us from Cowessess First Nation. Cowessess is closely tied in with Maryville as well. So I'll give the floor over to my friend here.
Thank you very much. My name's Perry Adjucote. My spiritual name is Nishan Pasu, means man standing with Thunderbird. I'm telling my mother's story. She was in residential school. I'm 61 years old. I went to day school. My mother was she kept to herself. A lot of times we wondered why she wouldn't say, I love you. She didn't know what love was. She struggled. She was abused by the people, whoever was abusing them, and she had a struggle all the time. She come out, and one point she just said that was enough. She wanted to take us out. I ended up in day school for I think about 4 years. 1970, I moved out to 70. I moved around from Regina to Calgary, and I went to day school. I said flower wrong. I said flower, and I ended up in the church basement for 4.5 years. I was taught by a French nun. All I learned how to do was knit and purl for the 4 years. And the struggles of that from my mother's trauma seemed to come to my trauma in my life. And I worked hard with learning to be who I was. Lots of times I've struggled with who I was and what I was. I was abused a few times in school by older people, and there was always a struggle. I remember one time my grandfather took me aside. He said, son, there's always going to be this brick wall. He says, don't pound yourself against, find ways around it. To this day, I still use that one. But living with a mother that was from residential school was hard. I think she was about 7 years old when she first learned to say, I love you. She told us that if she knew that word a long time ago, she would have used it with us. So we were brought up in a thing. She was a single mother. We were 5 of us, and there was 3 boys and 2 girls. And she had, pretty tough time moving to the city, learning what escalators were and telephones and stuff like that. And I was always the one trying to tell her what to do and that. And I helped her along a lot of times. I loved her very much. She was a very strong woman. And she learned love at 70 years old. Phew. The biggest thing that really hurted me was the most when they found those children. I don't think that 2-3 days I cried. I thought, wow, that could have been my mother. That could have been me, 5-10 years before that. And, I thank the Creator for me being here today and sharing this story with you. But my mother had it tougher than I did, She lived through the abuse and all that. I think she was in residential school when she started, and, grade 6, 7, and 8, went right through to high school in Lebret. And she went there, and it was the same thing there. There was a lot of abuse and stuff like that. But, living with her was just trying to get to know my mother. She was through so much trauma, it was hard, but she was always there for her children. She never forgot about us. I remember when she'd get mad at us or we'd do something crazy, she'd come up to me, she was a little short woman, and she'd grab my foot, You know, I give you like, I could take it, eh? She was a tough one, eh? And she always got us back in line, you know. She was a fighter, and I think that's why I'm a fighter today, is because of her. She showed a lot of, after she learned to say love at 70, she showed a lot. She passed away at 84. She had cancer. She didn't want to do the chemo because she said, oh, I'm too old and I don't really want to lose my hair or anything like that. And I said, well, that's up to you, Mom. And she said, no, I'm going to live with it. And we ended up putting her in a home just up the street over here. You know, when she hit that, I think she was 80-something. And she just, you know, she was always cheerful. She loved going out. She loved her and my older sister was. She always stayed with her. My older sister, my older brother ended up alcohol poison and ended up on the dialysis machine. For 4 or 5 years, he always said, oh, I feel like I'm a guinea pig in the hospital. He says, it seems like they're always doing things to me and shoving different pills and stuff and that. And I always try to tell him, well, that's for health, right, reasons, eh? And he passed away. And then when my mother passed away, my sister was so close to her, there was like peas in a queue, eh? Always off to bingo, always having fun, always laughing, you know. Those last few years of her life, she was always laughing, you know. And you know, I ended up coming from that. I ended up in Regina. I was going to school there. Well, I really never liked school back then. I really loved to go down by the creek and do some fishing and splashing in the water, you know, just trying to be a child, trying to live, you know. And the education that I got was, you know, knitting and purling. I didn't think it was going to take me that much in my life, but, you know, I was a fighter and I was going to keep on struggling, keep on going. We moved to Regina. I ended up being a paper boy and learned how to steal and stuff like that. And then we moved up to Alberta, and I come out here, and I thought it was quite funny. People were dancing around my desk, squashing oranges on my head and saying wagon burner Indian and stuff like that. And I was going, wow, what's wrong with you people? You know, I always believed if you cut yourself, we all bled red. You know, we were all related. And to me, that kind of looked at it in a different way, but I still, you know, I forgave. You know, there's so much hurt in the life that in order to move forward in your life, you have to forgive and you have to keep on going. That's what my mother always told me. Don't give up. She says, you know, you got some strong Indian blood in you that keeps you going. You know, it's always a struggle for me. It's always been a struggle. And I ended up meeting my ex, and I had a beautiful daughter that's sitting over there. I'm very proud of her. And she ended up going to school. I ended up serving a sentence in federal for 6.5 years for molesting my stepdaughter, because those were the things I was taught that, you know, and I didn't know. I was drinking alcohol, drugs. I was out of it, you know. I kept working. I kept doing this, and, you know, I suffered. I ended up doing a 6.5 year sentence. I had no idea what my culture was at that point in my life, and my mom gives me a call and she says, no, you should go and find out what your culture is about. So I ended up in Saskatchewan, Duck Lake. It was a healing lodge. And there I ended up doing a lot of native spiritual things, and ended up learning how to forgive myself, learning how to live with who I am. You know, I still have an enemy, but I still live with myself and still walk this life, this red road path that gave me a good freedom way of living. You know, it made me forgive the things that I've done in my past, then I learn to walk with my head up and be proud of who I am. There's a lot of things that occurred from generations to generations that seem to be passed on. And, my daughter went to school, she got educated. We always have some really good conversations about trauma and stuff like that. And, she taught me a lot about trauma. I never thought that I would carry that trauma from my mom's trauma to my trauma. I thought I was somebody, but I guess it just kind of keeps on us, it just doesn't seem to leave. And the 21st century, and I start to feel like, we found something that maybe this is going to change. Those poor children, they died for no reason whatsoever, and I'm glad my mother didn't pass in those ones there, but she was, it was hard for her, she had a rough life. She drank too, and she quit drinking at an age, and she thought, well, my children were more important, and she tried to be the strongest woman in the world. And, some days go by where I wish I can sit and talk with her, but it's my time, and I have my daughter, and I have to be as good as I can, and show my daughter. I got 2 granddaughters too. They're lovely, and I'm enjoying my time spending with my granddaughters, and I want to bring them into the culture and teach them our ways of sweat lodges and how beautiful it is to go to powwows and see the beautiful and the kindness and the things. I went to Sundance, and in my dream, one of my dreams I had when I was on my spiritual journey was that I was always looking for this tree of life, and my elder said that I had to attend a Sundance, and I attended a Sundance with my elder here, and I asked him, I said, can I go touch the tree? He said, no, you go right ahead, go. And when I put my hand on it and my head on it, I felt such a power from that it wanted me to be, I don't know, it felt like it took over my body and made me a better person. And, I used to have, I do come from a very, my great-great-grandparents were very powerful, spiritual, elderly men. I got a name from Man Standing with Thunderbird. My great-grandfather, his name is Man Standing Above Ground. And when I got that, I told one of my aunties, and she said, that's your grandfather's name's Man Standing Above Ground. And, I said, well, that's the ones that are giving us those spiritual names are our ancestors. And I carry my ancestors wherever I go, into sweats and all. And, they're beside me today. That makes me feel much better for who I am, I do still shed tears about my past, but that's my past. Today I look straight forward and to see a better life, and to make us a much better place for Native people and try to help all my brothers and sisters. I did a part-time thing with the sober crew downtown. We used to go around smudging the people down there and praying with them. And, that made me feel better. I was doing my part, and I get to a certain age in your life where you can't walk as much, so, I had to give that up, but I still attend sweats, and I still go in and pray for my daughter to have a better time, my granddaughters to have even a more exciting, more life, and I told them that you're never going to see what I see. So as we move through this life, the drum is a circle. As we come out of our traumas, there was a trauma with my mother and her parents. It was a circle there that come out, and it was passed down to me, and I carried that circle of life with me. But until I made my own circle of life, as I think I was 32 years old, I started seeing that I had to make a change. I had to do different things and not carry the past of my ancestors, but to do my own life, to make me who I am, to be this person I am today, to be able to speak and not be ashamed of who I am. It was all that trauma that caused me to come to this point in my life, and I'm here today. I appreciate life, and I appreciate the sweat lodge, because every time I go into the sweat lodge, I always think it's Mother Earth, and I come out of there, I feel reborn every time I come out of it. And every time I go in, it always gives me a different outlook when I come out of it. And I share that. I have a lot of people now. I sit somewhere by myself and do a little prayer. I was down at City Hall, and this woman she's driving by, and she says, I had to come and talk to you. I've had that a lot, that people come up to me and just want to sit and talk to me about, about this thing that's going on, and what do I think about it? And I said, well, I was in there, my mother was in there. I was a residential part of it, but, it's learning to forgive and forget, to move forward in our life. We can't have a hate on. I thought I did, but I didn't have it. I love everybody. We're all brothers and sisters in this lifetime. We're all here to help one another. We're all here to make this world a better place. Mother Earth needs more attention. That's why I wear this as a green color for Mother Earth, and these are my colors of that I was given when I was given my spiritual name. So I pray a lot for Mother Earth, and I see what we do to it, and taking oil from her is not what it's supposed to be about. That oil is for Mother Earth herself. We find different ways of doing things like solar power, wind power. There's so many other ways that we can survive in that. And today I see the change in Mother Earth, the way the atmosphere is changing, and the way the weather is getting colder or hotter or warmer, and I keep praying for her, because I think she needs our help today more than anything in this life, and when we're in that sweat lodge, that's part of Mother Earth. The rocks that we bring in, our grandfather rocks. I always carry a little tiny rock with me. It's a kind of goldish color, but it keeps me focused on what my journey is in life, and gives me a good outlook. And when I'm a very emotional guy, but I try not to be as emotional, because I've done some sweats, and I leave my prayers to the Creator, and I give them to Him, and He takes care of it for me now. And all I do is just walk this path and this life that I'm living. And it has been a wonderful 17 years of my life, and everything has changed so much, and all in good ways. I see family, I see different things that I never seen before. There was not much in my family as get-togethers. We used to have Thanksgiving and stuff like that. And, and then starting to see what's coming out of today's life, and the people, the way they talk about it and stuff like that. And, I think everybody has to understand that it was a very terrible life for us, but we're still here. We're very strong people. We're never gonna die. We're always gonna be here. This is part of us. This Mother Earth is part of us, and that's why we stand here. I stand here today in honor of her, and I give all that I can to help her out and take good care and be a good person in this life, because this is what it's all about. This is about, love and compassion for our brothers and sisters, no matter who you are, black, white, green, whatever color you are. We're all here together. We all bleed red the same as everybody, and that's what makes us family, That's what gives us this courage to come and stand up here and talk. Like, I could never do this before, I was always a shy person. I could never voice my heart, but I talk from my heart. One elder told me that when your mind and your heart come together, you become whole in life. And that's where I am today. I'm whole. I love to sweat. I love to talk to my elders. I love talking with people that come out of nowhere just to find out. I'm always there for them. I tell them, you need anything, just give me a call. I'll do my best to do whatever you need to be done. I'm always helping. I'm such a changed person from my spiritual journey. I've done a lot of ceremonies, and when I first started out, I really never believed in my cultural because I had no connection with it. And then I started doing cultural things and spiritual things, and I had an eagle feather hit me when I was in a dark room when a grandfather eagle come into the room, and from then on there, I've been hit with it's like God touching you on your head, giving you that forgiveness, and it changed my life. It changed me to think better, to be a better person, to be a more loving, kind person. And those children, I can't say how much they suffered, and we finally find the 21st century. We knew this for years and years. My family's talked about it. My mother her last words were hoping that they'd find these children. And her friend before she passed away, she got her spiritual name. It was little girl standing by the river with beads. So when we cremated her, we had her beads with her, and that's the way she wanted to go. She said she didn't want to be buried, she wanted to be cremated, and that's the way I want to be cremated. And she was she had a hard time, but she was always there for us. She never gave up hope on her children. She was always there. She was there when her son passed away. I was there when she passed away, and my sister was so close with her. When my mother passed away, she was saying she was having dreams of my mother coming to her and saying, "Come with me." And my sister didn't live very long after that. I think she was probably about 6 or 8 months later. My sister walked up the stairs and tripped on a little dog leash there and hit her head on the concrete. And I took her in, and she says, "Oh, I'm all right." But I said, just to make sure that, nothing's wrong with you. And we brought her in, me and my daughter, we brought her in, and the next day we came back, she was in a coma. She pulled out of that one, but the last one, I donated my kidney to her, by the way, too, and it went for 25 years, and she ended up that they gave her too many pills or something like that, but the kidney passed away after 25 years, and they put a plastic in her, and she always used to complain about it. "Oh, this is bugging me," My sister also been through a lot of things with living on the dialysis machine and doing that, and that's just my family, and it was always hard, but we were always there for each other. We were always praying for each other. We were always brothers and sisters, and that was the only thing we had, was just our family. We didn't have a big family. We didn't get along very good with our other family. We just stayed together, and my mother was always sort of like the leader from Regina to Calgary, and it was, if we didn't make too good in Calgary, she was going to move to Vancouver. But we ended up here. She ended up getting a job here as cleaning at Sheraton Hotel back in the day, and she got me a job there, and I kept working from there, and ended up in a small advertising company. I spent over 30 years there, and my boss was a color person, and he took me in he adopted me as his stepson, and he showed me the business. And I seen the ups and downs of learning how to do a business and advertising and small business advertising and stuff like that. And then he passed away, and I thought I lost a good friend there, and I couldn't keep on working in that same company, so I had to move on. It was a big part. It was like losing my mother and that, and it just seems like as you move on in life, you seem like you lose all those people, but we don't live forever. We all have to go, and it's a journey in itself, and the traumas from my mother to me, and hopefully my daughter doesn't have any of those. She's living a really good life. She has good family. I'm very proud of that I created a good person. I created a good daughter. That made me feel good, And thank you for listening to my stories. And that just comes from handed down to generations, that trauma that comes with it. We all have to make a new circle, and I know my daughter's making her best to make a new circle in her life. So I give that to her, and I thank my mother. If she's here, she's probably here beside me. My ancestors are probably all standing beside me, because I've never had so much courage in my life to talk like this. Mm-hmm. Hey, thank you very much. Hey. Mm-hmm.
So our last Robert George from Chapways. He was a long-time citizen of this city now, has returned to his First Nations community. He always winds up back here somehow, some way. I have to call him brother. I left it open for him to maybe sing a song and then give us a story about some of the things he went through as well. All right. Before, I'm a 60 scoop survivor.
Second generation residential school survivor. My mom, my late mom, attended 4 residential schools back in the 40s and early 50s. She ran away from a residential school in Brandon, Manitoba. And I had a late friend of mine tell me the story of how they ran away and how he looked after her and brought her to White Bear, even though she was from Pepeekses around the Belcaris area. And when she went to White Bear, that's where I came to be. But it's 1956, and I'm 65 years old. I remember the first time. What I'm going to say, what I'm going to talk about. We know about the legacy of the residential schools. We know about the legacy of what's happened in the past. But it's how it got there. How did we get there? How did we become a part of that system that was supposed to look after us, but turned out that it was more harmful to us than any good? I learned, when I started my healing journey, I started learning things, learning about identity, learning about our people, learning about the system in itself and how we got to be where we are. Nobody, when we talk about truth, when we talk about reconciliation, I don't hear governments and I don't hear churches talk about the policies towards Indian people during contact and even as time went on. I don't hear people talk about the doctrine of discovery. I don't hear people talk about the 1857 Gradual Civilization Act, or even the creation of reserves, treaties, all this stuff. I don't hear people talk about that. We talk about it lots, about like as First Nations people. We talk about it and we try to hold Canada's feet to the fire. Same with the church, same thing, you know. There's a lot of things, there's how we got here, because I can look back at the ones that talked, my brothers here that sat here and talked about themselves, and I can relate to a lot of the things. Why did they take us from our home? Why did they come to your reserve, give your parents liquor, and then load you on a bus and take you to residential school? Well, that was their policy, to civilize. The only way you can civilize is you start from the young ones, to teach them and train them, so they take the kid away from the parent, put them in residential schools, to teach them their way of life, that colonial way of life. And like Ernie said, like for me, I don't hold back. I talk about the reality of everything. The whole purpose of residential schools was to take the Indian out of the Indian, to make them something that they're not. And I you know, like I looked at it, and I was, you know, for me, I wouldn't be here. I actually shouldn't have been here. I shouldn't be here. Because when I ran away in 1972 from residential school in Gordon's, I ran away in a blizzard. What I had on, I had winter boots, jeans, long johns, a little winter jacket, mitts, too. And I ran away in the middle of a blizzard. And every time we ran away, like during the 6 years I was in there, we always ran south or we always ran east. Never ran north. But I played, that's the way I went. I went north. I went straight into a blizzard, blowing winds, everything like that. From Gordon's to Punachai was maybe about 6-7 miles. Seen the highway, I followed the highway. I stayed about maybe 200 yards off the highway and I'd follow it. Kept walking through the open fields. Once in a while stopped in the bush. When I got to Punachai, I was so cold and so hungry, thirsty and everything like that. And I knew there was a teacher that was really nice to me. Like she was really, really nice, you know. So I went to her place and I knocked on her door and she opened the door and she said, "What are you doing? You shouldn't be here." And she said, you know, like, "Come on in." She said, "Come in." So she said, you know, "Give me your clothes." She said, I'll put them in a dryer. And then she gave me a meal. She fed me. But I was reluctant to take my clothes and give them to her, because what if she phoned the school and they come and got me? But she didn't. She didn't. So after she dried my clothes, and I was just about falling asleep. I was so tired, and I was after a full stomach, and it was just like. So I thought I had it in my mind that I had to keep going. So I told her that I have to go. So she gave me my clothes, and she tried to dry out my boots as much as she could. So, but anyway, I dressed up my back same way, and I snuck out the back to the alley and make sure that, because every time we ran away, the cops always brought us back. They found us and brought us back. So I was scared. Punisher has RCMP in there. So I snuck down the back alley, looked around, went racing across the tracks, went racing across the highway, and into the bush. And this blizzard was still going, snowing and blowing snow and everything like that. So we headed west, Quinton, Raymore, followed that highway again, same thing. Got to Quinton, crossed the tracks. I followed the tracks, actually. But in between Punachai and Quinton, there was a slough, kind of out of the way, and I went down there and I started kicking snow away. I was getting tired. I kicked snow away, and I sat down there. And I was sitting there like that, trying to keep warm. I caught myself. I just about fell asleep there. So I just shook it off, and I got up and I went walking again, kept walking. Got to Quinton, got to the tracks, and I was going right into the teeth of the storm. So I went off to the side, and I seen another slough area there. I went and kicked some dirt away, some snow away, and I made a nice clear spot, and I sat there. And I must have fell asleep. But something woke me up. I don't know what it was, but something woke me up, and I got up and I started going again. By the time I got to Raymore, it was dark. Still blowing snow across there. But what Mrs. Black did was she gave me $2. In 1972, $2 was lots. So anyway, I wound up going to this Esso and I bought some stuff. Started hitchhiking again down the highway towards Regina. I got a ride by this old farmer who was actually going to town. But that's I don't know what kept me. Like I said, I shouldn't be here. Shouldn't have been here. The reason why we ran away was because of what we went through in school. From 1966 to 1968, the church ran the residential school, the Anglican Church. In 1968, the government took over. And every year, like I could tell you stories that would curl your toes. When we were taken, the same thing that Wally said is that, we were actually picked up off the reserve on buses, taken. Our parents were, like my mom and my stepdad, would be given liquor, just so that it would make it easier, to go. We were scared. We didn't know what was going on. We didn't know where we were going. From where we lived to Punachai, like in an old bus, it was like 5 hours, 4.5 hours. So we picked up kids all through the reserve. So we endured lots, myself. And I don't know if I'm ashamed to say it, but I did say it in my, when I went through the compensation on the residential school thing, told the stories of, the physical, the psychological, the sexual abuse that I went through. It was, I don't know if it even made you any more or any less a man as I got older because of what happened. I spent 10 years after I got away from there, actually about 12 years, of looking for love. You know, like he said, we thought we were being loved, but it wasn't. We didn't know at that time. Well, I didn't know. So we ran away. When I ran away, I spent 12 years of my life running. I would get little jobs, but then I would only last for a little while. When I went back to the reserve and went to the town school, I couldn't fit in. It was something that was taken away, that ability to concentrate, that ability to trust, that ability to, interact for a person at your age, with other kids your age, that were totally different from the ones that were in residential school and the ones that you went to school with in residential school versus the ones that you went to school with in Whitewood. It was a totally different world and environment, and tried to adapt. And even in Whitewood, I talked back because I guess I was kind of like rebelling or something. I didn't want to listen because, I don't know, I used to get cracked in the back of the head with a book. You get hit in the back with a ruler and, stuff like that. And I never went back to school. I only went to partial grade 10. It's tough to talk about it, but even my wife now, we've been together for 35 years. I quit drinking 36 years ago, and even in our first relationship, when we started getting together, I wouldn't allow her to sleep behind me. She'd always like to cuddle behind me, but I had that fear of that person behind you. But as time went on, we started. I guess it started with a kind of what we call a spiritual awakening. You get these things that come to you, these, dreams and stuff and that. And then I started inquiring, started to try and learn, but it was kind of tough. As time went on, I wound up going. I met Ernie at when we were at PICS. We played ball. We had to go out and play ball and stuff like that. At the Friendship Center, and so I had a little. Even at that time, I was still running away. Scared to allow people to get too close. But started, when I think about back then, what the purpose of these residential school things was to take the Indian out of the Indian. So my thinking was, I got to put that Indian back into that Indian. Learn those ways. Learn what was taken away from that language. And I'm still learning everything. Every day we go out and we learn. I travel lots. I go to different ceremonies, sun dances, horse dance, chicken dance, ghost dances. I've earned the right to have a sweat and do the horse dance back home. I've earned the pipe. I've earned, but I never ever let people know that I have them, because for me that's sacred. That's me. It came to me, but to share it with other people, for the people. So now I've come a long way. My wife and I have come a long way, and we've each had battles. We've each had rough pasts, but together now we're still going, still heading down that, still walking down that road. We've been blessed with 20 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren, one on the way. And we're content, we're happy, But that healing journey I was told by the elders, you'll always be on that healing journey. You'll always be going, because you never ever stop learning, and as you're learning, you're healing also. So that's my life in a nutshell. And it is like I said, I there's things that I don't really talk about, back what happened. So one day. With that, I'd like to thank Ernie for allowing me this time to come and share some songs and share my story. Nanaskamut na wakakyo, niwago mantik. Thank you, my relatives.
We were going to set aside some time for some questions. However, we're going to maybe hold off on the questions for now. And there's a method to that approach, and that's to give people time to think about what you've heard tonight, to digest it. And our good friend Brian has the contact information for our speakers here, so we can arrange to answer those questions at a later time. But I think you've heard a lot of very touching, very hard, emotional types of information today. So we just give people time to de-escalate a bit here. But at this time, before we have a closing prayer and a closing song, I want to call on my friend Brian to come and say a few closing remarks on behalf of the church. Brian has been very instrumental in allowing these types of dialogues to happen. And when he called to request this forum, I felt, yes, it's important that we tell our stories, that we let the people know what it is that we went through and what we're still going through. Because those intergenerational impacts are very much alive and well today. So Brian, if you'd like to come up and say a few words here on behalf of this organization, we would appreciate it. I don't know, you might have to bend over to talk to that.
Oh, my voice booms enough.
There you go.
Yeah, that'll do the trick. You know what? On behalf of St. Andrews, I have some small tokens of appreciation. But I don't think any token of appreciation could truly say thank you for what we've learned tonight. Myself personally, my first contact with the idea of residential schools was in 1973. That's the first time I heard about them. So it was important to me that this story be told. And on behalf of St. Andrews, I don't think we could ever thank you enough, because it takes courage. It takes a lot of courage to speak a truth, to call a spade a spade. And sometimes it's called a shovel, because that's what it has to be. And Life is about learning, and you've taught us a lot tonight, more than I could ever imagine. So thank you from the bottoms of our hearts. I thank you all. Oops, that was close.
Say a closing prayer, and then Robert will sing us a song to close the evening.
Oh, first one.
Yep.
Nungum ninunde anamiakoi. Sigwa. Friend Robert is going to sing a closing song for us. Well, I'll do the closing prayer. Ne mishumis. Kichmigwechka pishay and manungum mishumis. Miwechka pishay manungum. You and your helpers, Creator. Thank you for coming to help us. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for looking after each and every one of your people here. We're just small pebbles in a vast sea of sand, so to speak. But we thank you for looking after each and every one of us and our families. We ask you for good things to happen in the future. Bring us together. Show us how. Teach us like we should be doing, but other things interfere. We ask you to look after us. We ask you to bring us all together, all nations, everyone on this earth. Thank you for looking after your people. I ask you to bless everybody today that's in this circle. Bless everybody that's not in this circle, that could be here but are not here. We ask you to give everybody a good future with this new truth and reconciliation that we're embarking on. We ask for good thoughts, good ways of looking at things so that we can get together and look after our Mother Earth. Oh, good. Way Kachimi which? Oh, just one?